So let's talk about obsessive thought processes. This is the first one, and I was about to say, oh, this one's not fun, but really none of them are fun, and we're going to go through a whole bunch of them. But like I said before, there is an upside to every single one of these things. I'm just absolutely convinced of it. So we are very prone to having very obsessive thought processes, obsessive thought patterns. Um, I am not a licensed therapist, so obviously I don't know how to diagnose anything, but I have licensed therapists who consult with me on a fairly regular basis, and I tell them even if you are someone who knows how to diagnose things like OCD, ADHD, anxiety, like I don't know how you would tell those things apart from how people in ultra conservative, high demand, high control religions, how we were raised. Like, I don't know how you would tell what's OCD and what's how we were raised, what's ADHD, what's how we were raised, what is generalized anxiety disorder, like, is it a nature or a nurture thing? I don't know. I doubt that anybody does because we were raised in a way that leads to obsessive thought patterns and to a lot of anxiety. It's really tough on us. Um, Most of us, the upside is we're really introspective, most of us, because of our upbringing, and that is a real strength. So, this varies from religion to religion, but in Christianity, most of us were taught about a scripture that says, "Straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to righteousness." And that is we're also taught that the road to hell is wide and broad and easy. So one very insidious part of what drives all of this is that we were taught usually that there is a right way to do everything, no matter what, and that we have to find that right way and do it that right way every time. Now, there may have been more leeway in some families than others. So I'm not saying that every single religious family is perfectionistic and obsessive in every single case. It's something that varies from family to family and grown up to grown up and all of that kind of thing. But this is a very common trend for people who grew up in high demand, high control religions. Um, a lot of people in more functional families and even more functional, more benign religions were taught that there are gray areas, that it's okay to make mistakes and that mistakes are how we grow and learn. But a lot of us who grew up super religious were not taught that. Um, we were mostly taught the opposite. There can be a million wrong ways and only one right way. And even if there's a right way, there might be a better way. And then if you find the better way, then you're kind of feeling guilty for not having done it the better way all along, the way that you thought was right before. Now you think it was wrong. This is a very common pattern, not only within our own individual thoughts, but it's a common thing for fundamentalist religious people to talk about on a regular basis, like comparing notes. Oh gosh, I always thought this way of baking bread was fantastic, and yet now I've found out there was a better way, and I feel kind of guilty for having baked bread in an imperfect way all of these years. Um, so if we continue to believe that there's a right way and we have to find it, that leads us to all sorts of obsessive thinking and endless analysis and makes it really difficult for us to make decisions for ourselves sometimes as we become adults. We can become obsessively self-critical because we were taught to examine ourselves in minute detail. We usually don't just scrutinize our behavior, we scrutinize our thoughts and even our feelings. Some of us were taught as children that even feeling angry was actually a sin, or to look on someone else and feel lust or sexual attraction was a sin. Even thoughts and feelings can be completely wrong and bad depending on the religion that you grew up in, and then can land us in hell or outer darkness or whatever was the bad thing for the religion that we grew up in. Um, these religions are also often full of double binds. I probably should have looked up the perfect definition for that before I started this video. I didn't. You can find it on the internet easily. A double bind is like you can't win either way. There's no that you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Although we wouldn't have said damned if we grew up ultra religious, but I say it now. Um, one of the double binds that my ex-Mormon clients tell me about is they were taught If you're living correctly, then you should be happy. And if you find that you're not happy, then you're living wrong. It's your fault. And they wind up kind of obsessively scrutinizing themselves. Why am I not happy? I'm clearly doing it wrong. It's a double bind. It's a really, it doesn't work. It's not logical, but it is one of the things that we were taught and that we got stuck in, and we were told we should stay stuck in it while we figure it out. And it just leads to these obsessive thought patterns. Um, I recently took a class from Melissa Walker, who's a licensed therapist, and she talked about a client. Do I want to go into this one? I had planned to in my slides, but it's how many trigger warnings do I want to give? I'm going to skip that one, and I'm probably not even going to edit out the little place where I started going down the wrong path because I'm trying to not be perfectionistic for myself while I do these. But just let me say that conservative fundamentalist religions are usually full of double binds and impossible standards, saying here are the exact correct behaviors: don't have sex, don't want sex, you should desire only the opposite sex, but only after you're married, never fight, you should always believe exactly the right things. And even if someone forces something on you, it's probably your fault. And you shouldn't have any feelings about this that we don't approve of. It's very, very all consuming, and it's not good for mental health. Um, I went through a spell as about a 12-year-old. We, of course, were not allowed to cuss. And all of a sudden, as a 12-year-old, I found these cuss words just showing up in my head. And I couldn't stop thinking them. And I felt really guilty about it. And so the harder I tried not to think these cuss words, the more likely I was to actually think them. Um, and it was just really all consuming for a while. Thankfully, I did have a woman in the church, one of my mom's good friends, who I finally felt brave enough to bring it up with her. And she said, I know that you're not supposed to think things that you're not supposed to, but I really think you can let this one go. I think you're just rethinking it because you're so afraid of it. And I think if you stop worrying about it, it'll probably go away. And that did actually happen. And I'm grateful to her to this day. But we got different messages from different grown-ups, and some of them really stressed that every thought needed to be pure. Um, the one thing that bothers me, let me pull the photo up again and show it to you. The only thing that bothers me about this particular photo when I chose it is, I don't know if you can see here clearly, but there's a little safety line attached to this tightrope walker's ankle. And most of us did not grow up that there was any safety line whatsoever, that basically we could be in a whole lot of trouble quite easily if we weren't obsessive enough. Um, so it leads to a lot of anxiety for obvious reasons. But I also want to talk a little bit more about the really huge strength that I think goes along with this. We are usually excellent analytical thinkers and usually very introspective in useful ways. Actually, I'm going to quantify that. Some of the people who stay are maybe not very introspective. They have not chosen to look at themselves deeply enough and honestly enough to want to get out. And that's going to sound dismissive. There's way more to it than that. I don't mean that people who stay in religion are not introspective or they're not analytical thinkers. It's just a difference I've seen. By the time people come to me for help, they are always good analytical thinkers, and they are always introspective, because they wouldn't come looking for help to take apart all of this if they were not thinking analytically and introspectively. Um, so what do we do about this? There's a lot that we can do about this. There's a lot you can do for yourself, and there's a lot that I do with clients and that your therapist can do with you. There's lots of help out there, not just me. But one of the things we do is we just look more closely at the obsessive thoughts. What's the pattern here? What's the core of it? Is it true? How do you know it's true? Can you prove it's true? And one of the things I do is just work with people to really, really look more closely at the obsessive thought processes, figure out what is verifiably true and what is not. And it almost becomes like a ball of yarn that is all tangled up, and we start picking it apart, identifying the core of the confusion, and it just kind of after a while unravels itself. And we can get better and better at doing that over time so that when we find ourselves thinking obsessively about something else, we know we took apart this other area over here and we know what to do to start taking apart the new piece of obsessive thinking. There's a lot to it, but that's just some basic information. And this is one of the things that I just dearly love to do. It is so rewarding when we unlearn these obsessive thought processes, when we learn how to process our anxiety, feel our fears, look at our options, and just be more open about it and less tied up in knots, less terrified, all of that. It's really rewarding. And you can do a lot of this on your own. I'm happy to help you. Therapists can help you. Again, there's a lot of help out there. Next, we're going to talk about how our problems seem to be pervasive and persistent.